Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dark Angel says, is there any hope for my 3.5-year-old son to talk again? He used to talk since June. He made up a language.
Okay, and I think I saw a couple of more messages coming in about that child. Do you see
You're
them?
absolutely right. He says he can, they say he can repeat whatever you ask him to repeat, but not answering questions.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see if there are any more. I think that is the only one, the only other one.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. This is unfortunately the experience of many parents, and usually, yeah, and it's the term for it is regressive autism, but I don't know, I don't really care for that term. But what it is basically your child loses skills, and it's probably a little even more traumatic than when a child doesn't develop those skills. So I as Shannon would often say, air hug, first of all, because I know that it must be a very scary moment for you right now. But yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the children that we work with have had language and at some point lost their speech. And I think that this is, and your child is 3.5 years old, this is the absolute perfect time for you to start doing ABA, or applied behavior analysis. And that is what will get your child's speech going again. And right now, repeating is good. It's called echolalia, and it is it's a more basic form of language. If you can think of babies, for instance, infants and so on, they will just repeat. And gradually, the next phase after repeating is what we call manding. So then the next phase is to teach the child to actually use words to request. And then after that comes tacting, which is what you're referring to, which is teaching the child to label objects and kind of point to objects and label them and so on. And then after that comes intraverbals, which is kind of talking about objects. And it is entirely possible that your child at 3.5 had already gotten to the tacting level and has lost some of that. So it'll come back. You need to do ABA as fast as you can. And let us know where you are. Maybe we can help you find someone who can start with you. But it is a process of teaching the child first receptively, in other words, touching objects so that they become familiar with the sound, and then later sounding out objects or identifying objects by naming them. Also, another thing I would suggest is that you check your child's hearing and make sure that your child's hearing is doing okay. And you can write in and tell us a little bit more. Was your child recently ill? Is there something else going on with your child? Usually, this kind of regression starts with some sort of environmental thing. And of course, it's very important that you also look at things like, what is your child's diet? I'd want to know a lot more about your child, because we need to work on stabilizing, which means we want to make sure the environment in every possible way is kind to your child, whether it's a diet change or whether it's an environmental thing we have to change so that it's not sensory overload. Tell us a little bit more about what has recently happened.
And I just want to say that another person has written in, Navid, says that their son is 4 years old, but hasn't started talking yet, very, very little eye contact, and they want to know if there's any hope. And I know it's different than what the last parent said, because the last parent said there was language and then they lost it. So I want to address that. But when you guys talk about hope, one of the things that I said was that I want to be telling the stories. I want you to look at, this was my son right before his 3rd birthday. And he had been speaking at one point, and then he lost virtually all of his communication. And this picture, I don't know if you can tell, is a picture taken of him laying on his side, because it's the only way we could get him to look at the camera, because there was virtually no eye contact and there was virtually no language, but he would babble. He would make these high pitched noises, and he, like you said, made up a language. He would, but there was nothing that meant anything. I want you to see that this is my son's high school graduation announcement, because he graduated with honors from a college prep high school. See, I skewed my glasses, in June. So if you want to know about hope, that's what we have for you. Now, his story is not everybody's story, because every kiddo is different, but I want you to know that what Dr. Granpeesheh just said to you, to do ABA and to do it intensively, to do it as soon as you can, as much as you can, as often as you can, and learn all the things that there are so that you're following through on it. That is what I was told to do. And I listened to it with every part of my being, because I believed wholeheartedly that it was my child's best chance. And it turns out Dr. Granpeesheh is right.
Yeah. But also, Shannon, I want to touch on that, the fact that you did some other things, and it's really important, I think, that we kind of, ABA is the teaching tool, right? And whatever you can do as a parent to make your child's health better is going to expedite the way they learn. So I agree with Shannon. Obviously, ABA is my whole life. But what I really think you also need to do, and you can almost see it with when you see early videos of Jem as well. There's a lot of the times we kind of think it's the autism, but our kids are struggling with gastrointestinal pain, sometimes with overload of sensory stimulation. Sometimes they have headaches, they can't express it to us. Sometimes they just feel cloudy because of too much fungus or candida in their gut. And it's really important that we take care of all that stuff, because it makes our children aware, awake, and ready to learn. And so that's kind of why I want to say that's all very, very important as well. And and then your child becomes ready and moves forward and just takes in the information.
Absolutely. Dark Angel did write back in and said that they're actually just coming from getting ears tested, and the ears are good, and that they have already eliminated dairy and sugar, which is fantastic. I think that that's a good place to start. A lot of times, people will recommend, and Dr. Granpeesheh can talk about this more than anybody else, eliminating gluten. I'm always about getting rid of the pesticides as well.
Yeah. I would definitely get rid of gluten next. I like it, it's hard. It's all very hard. All of these dietary changes are very, very difficult to do. All of us as parents are so busy, and learning about it and doing it is just incredibly difficult. But I will tell you guys, parents, now it's a lot easier now than it was about 10 years ago. And parents 10 years ago managed to do it. So now the next phase for you, which I think might make a difference, is to actually eliminate the gluten. And gluten is just the protein in whole grains. And fortunately, nowadays you can buy so many products that are gluten free. I'm more or less gluten free. I've been casein free, which is dairy free, for years. And I just can't digest it anymore. Like, some of these things are so bad now. Our animals, that where we get a lot of our dairy products from, are just, they have so many toxins, unfortunately. And a lot of our vegetation and all of, in the United States at least, almost 100% of what we eat is now genetically modified. And these genetic modifications really make things very difficult for us, for our kids. It becomes almost impossible to digest these foods, and there's very little actual nutrition in our foods, unfortunately. So a lot of people struggle with inflammation, removing the gluten as well. And sometimes also, as Parker notes, the artificial coloring and flavors as well. Those things are just difficult to digest. And if we can get rid of some of these things, it just makes the inflammation less. And, the immune system is in the gut. And as you make the inflammation less, you find that the child will be able to pay a little bit more attention. The reason for this is that when we're eating these proteins, we break them down, or our children, they break them down to a peptide level. They don't break them down all the way to amino acids. So, and these peptides tend to leak through the gut into the bloodstream, and they mimic our endorphins. So by eating these gluten products, the casein products, etc., our children literally feel like they have a high level of endorphins, so they feel sort of high, and that's not an ideal kind of situation for learning. So they're not awake enough and able to pay attention enough. So I would definitely try to do those elimination diets as well. I do want to go back to Naveed. Don't want to forget that, because yes, Naveed, the same answer here. Whether your child has just not started language yet or has regressed, the way to proceed is always going to be make sure that you're stabilizing the child's health through all of these things that we just talked about. Check on the diet, make sure the child is feeling good, sleeping. That's a big one that often we overlook. And when you've done those things, you need to do intensive ABA so that the child can pick up and learn, kind of like intensive tutoring. And then they can just learn and move forward. And if you're doing enough ABA, as Shannon said, hopefully your child will catch up to his or her peers.
There we go. Since we're talking about enough ABA,
Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.